one person scores the dope, the other one steals for the dope, the other one's there for you to use the dope to make sure you don't die, the other one's carrying the Narcan, the other one's staying at the camp to make sure you don't get mugged. And so that's why you kind of see these camps move around in groups. But yeah, by and large, we're underutilizing. Again, it was passed by a far left progressive legislator by the name of Lauren Davis because she lost her friend Ricky to an overdose. And that prompted her to create legislation that allowed everyday citizens, you and I, if we had a regular person out here on First and Main that seemed to be a grave danger to themselves or others, we could call the designated crisis line and report somebody that we could start a file to have them detained. And there's places like Valley Cities, University of Washington, the Crisis Connection Center in Kirkland. There are places for people to go.
So, like, I've never done fentanyl. I never plan to do fentanyl. Like, I've done drugs in the past, but, like, what do you think about fentanyl that people are so, like, want to use it, right? For example, a while ago, I went downstairs to go get something to eat, right? So I went to the store. And right in the front of the front door, a guy was scratching his leg, right?
Yeah.
And so I left. I went to his coffee. I came back 30 minutes later. He was still scratching his leg, and blood was just gushing out, right? I'm like, I never want to get that high, right? Like, what do you think it is about fentanyl that's just like so addictive?
Well, it's 50 times stronger than heroin. It's cheaper than heroin. It isn't opioid, so it's euphoric. It takes away your physical pain. It takes away your mental pain, and it's highly addictive. So you can't go far before needing another hit. It's why a lot of people are kind of populating around maybe a housing project or a particular RV, staying very close to where they can find their dealer. In the case of these people who, you start to get open wounds, it's the precursors, the contaminants. People will say bad batch. Everybody's taken off their shoes and socks because there's tranq in the drug now, which is a horse tranquilizer. And all of this sort of clandestine lab-made drugs makes you crazy, and now most opioid addicts using fentanyl, it's so strong and you need it so often and it knocks you out so hard that people are now having to use meth, amphetamine, and fentanyl together. And what's happening, that's why you saw surges in overdoses, is you just can't tell how much is in it, and why using alone is really a fast track to an overdose.
All right, so let's change subject for fast. So last year you ran for office, correct?
Yes, I did.
Now, did you run for office to help advance We Heart Seattle, or just to be civically engaged? What was the reason behind running?
Sure. So last May of 2024, I ran for State House for the 43rd District. I am a twice elected precinct committee officer for the Dems of the 43rd legislative district. So I've been on the ballot. I've been elected twice to do that, although I'm passive in my role, admittedly, because my colleagues there, to be blunt, had priorly been very verbally abusive towards me. And I have had to tell the leadership that, I don't want to be a part of that ecosystem where if you're not ride or die on the progressive agenda, you're cast away as being almost MAGA. There's a lot of rumors out there that you're not really a Democrat. You're not really, and we can get into that later. But the reason why I ran, I believe anybody that starts a nonprofit has their mission, and then often do get into lobbying or run for office to realize their mission, to be able to take it to the next level and have an influence on policy at the state level, to be an influencer around things like, as example, we talked about Ricky's Law. We need to have those designated crisis responders under the city's control, not the county's control. So like little things like handing out crack pipes and foil, I think that should be defunded. We should not be enabling addiction. I mean, these are like kind of low barrier ways that we could change the culture from drug friendly, come here to use drugs, to we are more of a recovery first community and aren't handing out that kind of paraphernalia. I also was asked to run because my opponent didn't have a challenger at the time, and I happened to be at a mixer, and I think this is kind of how life generally happens. Some things are not always well planned out, but I happened to be at a mixer, and people were like, we need somebody that lives in the 43rd, and like 150 people looked at me and went, Andrea, don't you live in Belltown? And I went, yeah. And then that night I filed against Sean Scott, who's a avowed Democratic Socialist Party member. You know, he's the defund the cops. He's let everybody out of jail. He's anti-park. He's anti-institution. He's studied Marxism. He's pro-political violence. He's gone on record to, you know, I mean, he has, you know, he won the race. He was endorsed by the Democratic Party, which you're seeing today in New York. You're seeing it here with Katie Wilson in Seattle, that the Democratic Party has really moved to a Democratic Socialist Party in various corners of our country.
Now, in your ex, you recently made some comments about your former opponent, right?
Mhm.
Like, can you talk about those?
So Sean Scott was, I don't want to use the word groomed. That's a terrible word. Sean Scott was courted by Frank Chop, rest in peace. He passed away this last year, who held the position for 30 years. I mean, talk about a one-party rule, one opinion rule in our state government. So Sean was in. He was networked. He was down there. He was being trained. He works for Solid Ground, which is a housing project that Frank Chop helped mastermind. Frank Chop is the mastermind behind what we now call the Homeless Inc. Space. Lots of housing, lots of billions, not a lot of improvement on what homelessness looks like today, certainly not from a visible street standpoint. But he is a socialist. He believes in, you know, and he believes in an ideology of social, you know, anarchism, socialism, anarcho-socialism, which is very hands-off, live and let live. You know, we're on, you know, we need to break down these institutions that represent and created systemic poverty and racism and all that, perhaps true, but it is a revolution to think that we're going to dismantle the United States of America as being a pro-capitalistic country to one, what we're starting to see, you know, in New York, where the government pays for grocery stores and cops are all bad, and you know, that kind of flavor of activism that is now we're seeing turned violent. And again, Sean Scott has gone on record, my opponent at the time, to say that, you know, how do we help protesters at at the UW campus that were creating millions of dollars of damage. So he seems to be for the destruction and the demonstrations at all costs for, again, the revolution. He has now been fined something like $12,000 for campaign finance violations. He has another fine for misconduct and unethical use of his public social media platform, blocking constituents and blocking media. So he's a little troublemaker. He's not all up to par with ethics and that. So it's a little disappointing that he unfortunately.
So do you plan on running again for any, not this one or maybe another political office?
I think politics. I mean, I've considered myself a civic leader, a civic servant. I'm a Rotarian. I'm a proud Paul Harris Fellow. I was Rotarian of the Year in 2023. I believe in service above self, that whether I'm elected or not, I feel very politically operative and plugged in. I love being a private funded gap filler. I just wish I had a more of a handshake with my electeds. I think I just got out of a lunch with Council Chair Girmay and Teresa Mosquedos, and was able to say, I'm here, but I probably wouldn't go into a lawmaker position. I think my sights are more like in a mayoral race.
Okay. And so I saw somewhere where you made a statement that you're a real Democrat. What does that mean, you're a real Democrat?
Well, Democrats are fiscally conservative. Democrats are for the people. Democrats are for taxes to serve people in need and to have social services and to have good governance. And I call that strong Democratic, old school, pragmatic, common sense, help the needy, and social justice for all, pro-choice, pro-productive rights, pro-immigration, done, the right way. And I know that's a very controversial topic right now. I think the course correction that we're doing is I'm watching how it's folding out. I'm probably not going to take any kind of a position on that. My ex-husband is Canadian. It was the biggest pain in the ass thing I've ever done in my life to get him a green card and to get him nationalized. And I know what that looks like. And I know it would be absolutely impossible to do for people that didn't have the means to take flights and to get out of work, to go to appointments, and to collect paperwork. It's very, very, very hard to live and work in the United States. So we need to make that easier. And I digress.